Assalamu alaikum.
In all the previous episodes, we talked on a very large scale about stars, black holes, galaxies, and all these large-scale things, but today's episode is a little different. It's different in the sense that in the previous episodes, we didn't have discussions on a very small scale, and the reality is that even on such tiny scales, there is just as much beauty as you find on the grandest scales. Today's topic is called quantum mechanics. My name is Hassan Ahmed, and today on Kehkashan, we will be talking about quantum mechanics. So whenever we look at everything around us, if we pay attention, we realize that everything is made of different materials. Wood and metal, for example, are both different from each other. Light and electricity are also different from each other. So what are all these things made of? Why do these differences exist among them? Physics tells us that everything is made up of very tiny atoms. We can't see atoms around us because they are extremely small in size. If this Newton's cradle is made of iron, it means that a large number of iron atoms are packed closely together inside it, and this congestion turns it into a single object. That's why it's iron. If you look at another material like gold, gold is made up of gold atoms, and the properties of those atoms are different, but they too are packed very closely together and held together in a group. That's why you find it in the form of gold. Silver, which has a different color from gold, is also formed by the connection of atoms, and those atoms are grouped together in it, so you see it in the form of silver. But scientists didn't stop here, because up to this point we still had an idea that we would see something like this. Scientists then looked into what atoms are made of and what exists inside atoms. Their main goal was to see that after observing the entire universe, after examining its sizes, after understanding how the largest black holes work and how the biggest galaxies function, but we have never really looked at how the tiniest things work or how to observe them. So the scientist's goal was to see just how small we can observe things, how far down in scale we can go, and whether there is something so small that nothing smaller than it exists at all. So then scientists invented more technology, developed spectroscopy, and through all these techniques, we realized that atoms themselves are made up of other things. That is, protons, neutrons, and electrons. Now these three things make up an atom. Protons and neutrons are present inside the atom, but the electron exists around the atom. Scientists didn't stop here. They wondered, what are protons and nucleons made of? A lot of research was conducted. After many years, it was discovered that protons and nucleons are made up of quarks. Now, when you look at all these things, there's an atom. Smaller than the atom are protons and nucleons, and even smaller things than those. So scientists began to wonder, will this process continue indefinitely? Will we keep discovering something even smaller every year and then something even smaller than that? However, after the discovery of quarks, further experiments could not progress any further, and brilliant scientists subsequently realized that these fundamental quarks are intrinsically connected to each other by elementary particles called gluons, which mediate the strong nuclear force. So far, scientists haven't found anything smaller than gluons, and theories suggest that they never will. In Switzerland, there's an experiment called the Large Hadron Collider. What this experiment does is it makes the tiniest particles collide with each other at very high speeds. And because of this collision, just like if you take two small balls and smash them together with great force, they break into pieces. In the same way, they said that if we bombard very small particles like atoms and molecules and similar things with each other, they will break into pieces. And if we observe those fragments, we can figure out what those things are made of. As this extensive and thorough experiment continued, the scientists involved progressively realized that there was absolutely nothing, no fundamental particle or constituent element smaller than the incredibly tiny quarks and the fundamental force-carrying gluons that they could possibly discover or detect. After many years of research, mathematics, and solving all the formulas, scientists got a slight idea that there is a way we can understand this thing. They said that string theory is the closest thing that will give us an idea of how quantum mechanics works and operates. They said that after going down to everything, gluons, quarks, the tiniest things, they are no longer particles, but instead take the shape of strings. These strings vibrate very rapidly at different frequencies, and each different frequency corresponds to a different type of particle. These different types of particles form different kinds of atoms, and those different kinds of atoms create our different kinds of universes. It feels very strange to talk about these things because we have never actually seen them. We have never physically observed atoms. We have never physically observed electrons. We have observed black holes, galaxies, and all these things. But even for scientists, understanding them is quite challenging. And another issue is that all the laws we have studied, which should apply throughout the universe, some of those laws stop working at smaller scales. This is a major mystery of quantum mechanics, on which many scientists have conducted research, to find out which phenomena work at large scales, but break down when it comes to smaller scales. Quantum mechanics has some very strange phenomena. For example, as you may have seen in mathematics, we say that 1 plus 1 equals 2, and 1 minus 1 equals 0. If we can write 1 minus 1 as 0, then can we write 0 as 1 minus 1? Of course we can. So, quantum mechanics, a fundamental and often counterintuitive theory in physics, states that there are certain subatomic particles around us that can spontaneously come into existence entirely on their own, seemingly out of nothing. This phenomenon is indeed a profoundly strange and perplexing concept, especially when considering our conventional understanding of the physical world. It stands in stark contrast to what we intuitively grasp about how things work, because, as we thoroughly discussed and established in the previous episode of this series, a core and immutable principle of the universe dictates that energy can never truly be created from scratch. It always originates from somewhere, always has a source, and is conserved within a closed system. The idea of particles simply materializing without any apparent precursor or energy input is what makes this quantum mechanical assertion so remarkably peculiar and a subject of intense scientific inquiry and philosophical debate. We tend to think there's nothing around us, but inside these vacuums, where not even a single atom exists, there are particles called virtual particles. These particles come into existence on their own, but they always appear together with their antiparticle. A particle appears and its antiparticle appears as well, like 1 and minus 1, and you could even write them together as 0, meaning nothing at all. This particular concept is also very strange and quite difficult to fully comprehend and understand, and I truly think that's primarily because we, as human beings, have never really observed such peculiar things or phenomena anywhere in our known universe. A very famous and highly influential physicist, Richard Feynman, who was awarded the prestigious Nobel Prize in the field of quantum mechanics, once famously stated that if you genuinely believe you completely understand quantum mechanics, then it most likely means that you actually do not understand it at all. It's just one of those things that you won't be able to fully understand, and no matter how much research you do in science, no matter how much of an expert you become, it's a topic that will always bother you and will always be on your mind. The very meaning of physics is to observe all these things and, by using new technology, to acquire knowledge that no one has ever obtained before. So even if we don't understand something, it's a good sign for science that we are still making progress, and every year we get to see something new. This is the true spirit of science, because if we already knew everything, we would never make any progress in research. If we already knew everything, then science itself would not exist, because the very purpose of science is to acquire knowledge that we did not have before.